Well, thanks for watching us here at WowBiz Nebraska. We are here today with you and my good friend John Fullerton. We have possibly the most profound and easy to remember way of moving forward in your business and evolving it at the right time in the right way. John, we've really got it segmented in about 4 different ways. Don't you think that will be a way to kind of think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you referenced materials, and I looked around a little bit, and there are 4 different stages that and there are different people who do different approaches to this, and they might say 3 or 4 stages, but Max Weber, who was an adversary of Karl Marx back in the 1800s.
Okay.
Those guys, they battled it out, and they talked about theory and economics and society and capitalism and things like that. So Max, not Max, but Max Weber, he wrote a thing called The Protestant Ethic in the Spirit of Capitalism. It was published in 1905. It was one of the leading texts that kind of defined different stages, but also he was posthumously published a thing that was called Economy and Society.
Okay.
And it gets into this. And then also Larry Greiner in the 70s did some stuff. But, the 4 stages, generally speaking, that we kind of arrived at was innovation.
Yes.
Growth.
Okay.
Improvement.
Ah.
And release.
Yes, release. Let's talk about each of them just a little bit. We got to move quickly through this segment, but this is really profound because when I speak with people, I may approach a business and they clearly think about themselves in a different stage than it appears to me. All right. So that's the notion. Do they have a good bead on what the company, who they are right now and where they're going? For instance, let's talk about this very first segment right here, which is innovation. That, here in Nebraska and many other places, innovation's not a topic that people want to warm up to that much. Why do you think that is?
Well, I guess people, they're comfortable with kind of the way things have been in traditional structures.
Right.
But there's a lot of people who are very innovative, and they come up with bright new ideas and invent new things and new approaches. And, it's kind of like a backyard pickup basketball game, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's a really loose structure in that part of the business. You're starting it up. You got a real fast experimentation. Everyone touches the ball. You got a small team, right?
Right. Roles
Kind of shift around naturally, similar to like, do you remember the 1992 film, The Mighty Ducks? Have you ever heard of that one?
Sure.
So, there's these misfit youth players are kind of starting out as a chaotic,
and all this is kind of an
team.
analogy for how businesses, basically startups, I think is what you're really talking about.
Yeah.
And how people pass the ball back and forth rapidly and pass it off and so on. And it's really interesting, to ask people that are, because I've worked in those kinds of environments, how far are we going this week? What's the plan? Who's going to make a basket or make some money for us? We have to ask those kinds of obvious questions because the whole thing is moving so rapidly, it's difficult to really know what we're doing. But it's kind of fun, really, to think about what the possibilities are. And I think that's why people get into business in the first place. They have a sense of what could be, and maybe attract a few people to them because they had this passion or some kind of a vague idea. Anyway, so that's an innovation-oriented thing.
Right. It's like like the Mighty Ducks. I mean, they were just like totally disorganized, but then creativity and teamwork made them to be able to overcome stronger opponents.
Yes,
it's kind of like a garden, in spring. We're putting the seeds out.
Sure.
We're starting to have things come to sprout.
And you don't know exactly where they're going to be when they get further along.
Right. So you got to trim, you got to nurse things along, right?
All right. So then they bring in outside consultants who come in and say, you've got to systemize, you've got to be more efficient, you've got to quit doing all this craziness, figure out exactly what you're going to try to make, maybe just focus on one thing. You know what I'm talking about there? That's kind of the efficiency phase.
Yeah.
And it seems like a lot of companies just want to stay in that one phase, but they have to move forward as well. What are your thoughts about that particular chapter or that particular phase?
Well, if your whiteboard is clean, you're probably not innovating hard enough.
Right.
You really got to think about things, and you got to bring the whole team together.
Yeah.
Everyone has ideas, but perhaps no one has a job description yet.
Right.
So, but then we want to reward initiative because half the time we may not even be sure exactly whose idea it was.
Yeah. Then we move on to the third phase. Let's say, for instance, that works out generally and the company stays afloat, maybe making profit for maybe a 5 or 6, 7 year period of time. And then things happen around them, maybe move, like artificial intelligence would be a great example, impacting the environment. And so they have to kind of sit back and acknowledge in front of somebody that I probably need to learn some things that nobody had ever told me before. This is a learning environment. Tell me a little bit about that phase. What's the number one thing, in your opinion? They're generating some profit. People seem to be pretty happy there, but not completely. What's the one thing that an owner, a business owner here in Nebraska, would probably be thinking about or wondering about?
Well, I think when you're innovating, you want to, really realize your wow factor by rewarding the bold experiments early, before they are just safe or obvious, and helping to provide rewards for those people. And it might be in terms of just their position or, their role within the entire company, or it might be monetary or other types of rewards, but also just reinforcement, positive reinforcement, providing that recrecognition is really important in that stage as you innovate.
Yeah. And also, of course, they get much more financially oriented when they're in that phase. They want to know what the margins are. If we add this or that, what's that going to do to our margins and our profits? Can I get more investments from outside if we actually add a product and kind of suck some of our business or suck some of our resources? So typically, though, it's a pretty smooth path at that moment. But then some things happen, don't they? Maybe the leader gets tired, retires. Maybe the lead salesperson decides that he wants to go somewhere else. And all of a sudden, and technology changes mega rapidly, right? And all of a sudden, they're in a mode where they're really, perhaps the viability of the company really doesn't exist anymore. And that's a very rough situation because they want to hold on to the status quo, as you pointed out a few minutes ago. And they'd like somebody to come along and tell them that it's going to be okay. But they do have to make some profound decisions, don't they? What would come to your mind if you were that kind of a person right now?
Yeah, exactly, because now you're moving from innovation to the growth stage, right? And you want to turn your business into a machine. You need to have systems, and you might have to have, and it's really definitely recommended, you have somebody outside look at and strategically analyze how you're doing things and how you can reorganize. And sometimes change can be a little uncomfortable, but in the end, it can really make a big difference. It's important to be able to really evolve and change so that then the business actually, the model improves so that it becomes more efficient in its delivery. Because yes, this is capitalism. You need to be able to deliver mass production, whether it's a good or a service.
Sure. Now we get to this phase, and it's a very interesting thing. It never goes away. We always have to acknowledge the burning forest phase that I'm mentioning here to you, where we have to actually acknowledge and come to grips. Maybe they fire again the CEO, like they did at Disney about a year ago, and so on. And even companies like Apple, extremely viable, are slow, and they have to think differently about what we're going to do or how do we move forward. So that's a real thing. But what's interesting, though, I like the burning forest metaphor. It's pretty dramatic. But when you say, well, we're going to shut down that company over there or shut down our division. We've got a factory out in New Jersey. We're going to shut them down. So those are burning forest tactics, of course. But also, somehow that releases a sense of power. All of a sudden, they bring in somebody new. He's a strategic guru, so to speak. He knows a lot of people or is connected somewhere. And so now there's this sense of, wait a minute, that was a bad scene we went through just now, but it seems like there's some possibilities here that we weren't even thinking about, right?
Yeah, that's right.
A very interesting chapter.
Yeah, and of course, there you're kind of really talking about in terms of the burning forest, like a release stage.
Yeah.
And in between is going to be improvement. So we're going to work on really making things feel safe for the employees to give some feedback, and
but
also
is it enough,
to improve
John?
the hierarchy.
That's my question. I mean, there's this notion about incrementalism, and we'll do a little improvement here and there, and yet there's a group of people over here on the side saying, that's not going to be enough. The industry that they're a part of is being reinvented. Not just the company itself, but the whole industry is going through a massive turmoil. And those guys are just not, making strong enough improvements, so to speak. It's not incremental anymore. Now we have to do something exponential. Have you ever been around a situation like that? It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I think it's something that, you might arrive at due to things that might not have gone quite right, or maybe there's certain kinds of pressures. Maybe you're not making the kind of money that you need to. Maybe you're not making delivery. You might have other kind of logistical problems,
Right.
And things like that. So, you really want to work on improvement, and maybe it's kind of like, the Karate Kid. You remember that old movie?
Sure,
He comes in and he's really inexperienced, and his mentor there, he really shakes things up for him, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, remember years ago as we wrap up here, Fuddruckers restaurants out of San Antonio, they were killing it. They were doing really great back in the day. And then an operation called Flaky Jake's kind of copied. It was an incremental thing. They kind of copied what Fuddruckers was doing. And they're off and running, and Fuddruckers is continuing to do well. Well, all of a sudden, somebody came down on Flaky Jake's and said, "You're imitating too closely. You're actually stealing their trade dress." And that was the beginning of the end for Flaky Jake's. So they had to come around and acknowledge the fact that we just can't copy the really successful operations.
Right.
And but that was a very interesting moment. Thank you, John Fullerton.
just
You really clarified our understanding of the rhythm that businesses have to go through. And sometimes the burning forest time is a good thing, but sometimes it's the end. All right.
But hopefully through that, you have a renewal, you have regrowth, and then you have a new forest and the saplings can grow.
Indeed, you're absolutely right. Thank you, John Fullerton. We are learning a ton right here in WowBiz, Nebraska. We'll be right back. Thanks again for John Fullerton's insight, as he always brings to the party. And we've got a promotional sponsor coming right up, looking around to explain what is available through WowBiz Nebraska. We'll see you soon. Thanks so much. WowBiz Nebraska is brought to you by a new company here in the Omaha area. It's called Nebraska Now. Let me say that again, Nebraska Now. And of course, the syllable there in that word is new. And the question I want to ask you right off the bat, I'm going to be very pointed here in our brief time during this sponsorship, is do you know how to make your company feel new again? Do your employees have a sense of newness, a sense of excitement, a sense of moving forward, a sense of embracing technology and a lot of people that come with it? This is the key idea. It's an educational concept. There's a meeting process involved, a monthly meeting. It also involves at least 30 minutes every single month, sitting down with somebody like myself, strategic, talking about the future, what's hanging you up, what's moving forward, how are you disappointed, what's exciting you, and so on. How do you bring in other talents? The word new just keeps coming up again and again and again. And here in Nebraska, that's particularly pertinent, although young professionals everywhere in their 20s and 30s and possibly in their early 40s are looking for something new, something that is meaningful, a way to reinvent. Let me say that word again, reinvent your business, all right? The idea is to keep momentum. Now, everybody has, if they have a job, they're working for a company, there is a sense of movement. I don't know if it's momentum exactly, but there's certainly movement. But the notion is to reinvent the company so that momentum accelerates. The Nebraska Chamber of Commerce is using this word again and again as it issues different reports and research things. The word is constantly accelerate, accelerate. And when people say, well, how do we do that? It always leads back to this one word, new. Now, there's another phrase that's related to all of this, new and Nebraska, et cetera, and people are excited about that. They want it. What is new? What can we do that will get the customers excited about us? Maybe we have a new product, obviously, would be an example. Whether it's incremental or, by the way, it could be exponential, right? Doesn't have to be a tweak. Like McDonald's will maybe come up with a new product, and it's kind of a variation from Burger King or Taco Bell or whatever, but it's a little different. So bam, they're pronouncing it and staging it as a new product. But there could be a whole different way to come at the business. And I'll use McDonald's again. You may notice when you walk into their into their restaurants and so on. You'll see some big digital panels, very graphical, and all the menu items are right there, and they're touch screen, right? And so you want a hamburger here and some pop, et cetera, and you kind of go through this. You're not even looking at the counter. You're not looking at the people back in the kitchen. You're just standing here kind of creating your order. Hit a bottom, a little button there and prepare, and then you stand around and kind of wait for them to bring you the product. Now this is exponential, right? That's not incremental, that is exponential. That is a great example of something new. That's right, new is now. This is a great phrase, new is now. And everybody in the eastern Nebraska area is chanting, new is now. But they may not understand what the key word is, and this is really exciting. The word now obviously resembles the word wow, right? And so we're thinking, how do we get these young folks to come to the state of Nebraska and work? We need another 24,000 people. 20 to 24,000 people need to be here in Nebraska. There's tons of jobs available, and yet we can't seem to get people to come here because they don't think about wow when they think about Nebraska. So now we've got Nebraska now. Now is wow. Now I don't mean to be a wordsmith too much, but there's a lot of wisdom wrapped up in those two little phrases that are kind of related, kind of convergent, so to speak. And this is what I want to encourage you to do. Think about, by the way, this group, Nebraska Now, is going to have about 20 members, and they'll be meeting regularly, and you will appreciate the members because they are intelligent and they are there to get something, learn something, apply it the very next day, because as I mentioned before, we have to accelerate as a state and as a community. We have to get some things done in order to be competitive in a variety of different ways, whether it's a community or a business or the entire state, whatever it is, we have to kick it up, move forward, and make something happen. So if you're interested, you know somebody is interested in Nebraska and Nebraska Now, so to speak, you might want to get a hold of newbraska.com and find the item where you write down your form and so on. Whatever it is, request a little attention and elaboration, and you'll learn a lot in a short period of time about newness and the power of it and the availability of newness, and how you, your company, and individuals that you respect can fit into this paradigm. Nebraska Now, it's quite a new group, and it will be available across the entire state in a matter of time, and we're looking for the first membership group of 20 people. 20 people for Nebraska Now. I'm Lynn Hinderaker. Thank you so much for paying attention and, of course, giving some respect to the Nebraska Now organization. We'll be right back. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Well, we're back here in WowBiz, Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderaker, and this has been another power-packed show, very educational at the front end. Don't miss this show on YouTube. And then, of course, some very interesting announcements about a new sponsorship called Nebraska Now. You've got to check that organization out. But I want to tell you something here. You know, as you look around the country, and you try to figure out who's doing what and what's really meaningful, and is there something we should be doing similarly, and so on. And I've got here an article that was picked up just a couple of years ago. I'm going to lift it up right now. It's just a black and white, so it's not particularly easy to read, but it says, smaller cities get hip. They're talking about how to attract young professionals to their small city, right? It could be Blair, it could be Nebraska City, it could be Beatrice, Fairbury, obviously Grand Island or Kearney. Any one of those communities could use more young professionals or young workers. They're surrounded by factories and distribution centers and so on, and yet when we try to get people to come to these communities, it's extremely difficult, and they have kind of a distorted idea about the state of Nebraska in particular, and how they fit in. Because that's really a piece now. You know, you talk to these people privately, and they're very unclear about what they're trying to do, what their career should be, and will they fit into these communities like Beatrice and Fairbury? Will they get the attention that they need if they want to be an entrepreneur? Can they actually launch a company and get the resources together and the support in order to do that in these communities and in our state, all the way out to Ogallala and Scotts Bluff? These are reasonable questions, and we're not answering them very easily. When we see new law go into place or grants being issued and so on, we need to move quickly, and I mean now, to take advantage of those things. But as it turns out, we kind of drag our feet a little bit. We don't move quickly. We get the board of directors together. We talk about things, but we don't move quickly to take advantage of opportunities. In fact, what we really don't do is we don't understand or see trends that actually do, in fact, represent opportunity. That's the key right there. We're watching what's going on. We kind of maybe take a look at the news at night when we have a few minutes and so on. A lot of discussion, of course, about generative artificial intelligence. Only a small percentage of companies right now are actually using it, but a lot of executives will tell you they are interested, they want to know more, but they don't quite know how to come at it and how to leverage artificial intelligence. But that's not the only topic. That's not the only thing. For instance, coalitions and strategic alliances are increasingly important. Bringing in people from outside. You know, the smartest people in the world are not necessarily just the people on your membership or your employee roster or whatever. It used to feel that way. We have all the smartest people in this business, and they're all right here, and everything's great and so on, but that's all changed now. Many of these people want to work part-time over here, or they're freelancers over here, they're going to join some agency over there, and they're looking not just for the opportunity to excel and have a good time and so on, but they also want to create a moment that they feel is important. How do I say it? They're looking to create meaning. Let's put it that way. Now, when you talk to an HR person or a manager or a supervisor and they say, "What did you just say?" I say, well, they're looking for more meaning in their life. And you kind of have to begin with your career, and then there's relationships with people in your workforce, right? And they're this is the grist, so to speak, of the rationale why they're there. And you'll listen to them, their mouth will drop. They say, well, they're here, as I understand, because we're a good company, we take good care of our people, we pay them competitively, and there's really nothing more about the whole discussion than what I've just said right now. There's nothing more to it. So there's clearly a big diversity, a big segment between employees. And then, of course, we have another segment, which is remote workers, right? And, of course, the people that are at the office. Remote workers are a little bit nervous about the fact that the people that are going to the office every day are preferred by the CEO or the senior executives. It's easier to talk to them. They're in the hall and so on. All these other people, maybe 70% of the entire workforce, they're working at home in their offices or in the living room or whatever, but taking care of the dog, taking care of the children, getting them to school and so on. So there's a big division right there. And as a result of that, it's very difficult to have meetings and collaborate quickly, by the way, around particularly unusual things like innovation and so on. Should we launch a new product? Do we need to get these people in here more often? And of course, there's also these leaders of these large companies, and their attitude is either come to the office and stay here at least 3 to 4 days a week, or quit, just leave. All right, because the commitment level is not there. He said something I loved saying, by the way. His name is Jamie Dixon or something like that. And he said, there's no hustle. There's no scramble. There's no, they don't have that entrepreneurial drive. They don't care that much one way or another. I can't have people around me like that, right? So this is all very interesting. And we got a lot of companies that need employees right now, and there is a major rift between what the managers think and what the employees think. And by the way, one way to change all that is social responsibility. Obviously these younger workers, they want to get paid well and so on, but they also have a sense of compassion, empathy, responsibility, and they'd like to have an employer that does something for people that lack funds, or they're unable to do certain things because of physical or mental disability, whatever it is. And we could go on and on about that. But the bottom line is today's Gen Z in particular wants an employer that cares about the community and does real significant things for people that need help and can't even get a job, much less earn money. So there's a lot of dissent out there. I mean, think about the office industry, huh? What about the office furnishings industry? What are they doing exactly? Well, if you talk to them, I mean, they'll say, well, we're just waiting for somebody to call us so that we can go over there and assemble some nice looking desks and maybe put up a little panel there in their office and so on. But that's not even close to what the situation demands. And I've been involved in this for some time. If you start talking about the workforce and the psychology of workers and how they want to get together just to kind of hang out and trade ideas and chat a little bit, and then the real hard work gets done back home. Well, this just blows the mind of many of the department heads, supervisors, and HR people. And yet they really have no choice. They have to dress up the offices, and then, of course, many times there's nobody there. And they're looking at each other saying, are we doing the right thing? How do we do this? All right. So this is WowBiz Nebraska. I'm sharing some hard-won insights with you. And I'm excited about hearing from you because there's so much going on in our world right now. And there's a lot of transition, a lot of change. I say we need kinetic companies. That's how I describe companies that can go with the flow, move with whatever's going on in the culture and in the industry and across the state of Nebraska. A lot of things happening, and you'll find them all out and a deep discussion about them right here on WowBiz Nebraska. My name is Lynn Hinderaker, and again, don't miss our show. John Fullerton is usually with us. He's always got great insights about the future of business here in the state of Nebraska. We look forward to seeing you again. Thanks so much for watching.